What's going, guys? Aarava here. Welcome back to the Pitlane podcast, episode number 20 today, of course, for the British Grand Prix review. You're here with your usual host, myself and Tom, and we've got a special little guest in the form of Justin. Obviously, Cal is still away, and I think we had Justin on before, so you should hopefully remember him if you follow the podcast regularly. So he's been on before. But yeah, so for the British Grand Prix, not the best one. I think I saw a good tweet earlier on Twitter. Intriguing, but not very good. Guys, general thoughts, just of the Grand Prix as a whole?
I agree. Intriguing, yes. You know, it's one of those races where you're watching gaps and stuff like that. You know, you're like, oh, this person took a second out of that person. yeah.
It's the return. It's the return of.
If you're not a fan of math, then yeah, I guess it was a pretty big snooze fest. I mean, it wasn't the worst race of the season. And I mean, if it wasn't for the other races this season being so good, then maybe we wouldn't think it was so bad. But yeah, definitely not the most exciting race.
Yeah, it was. I think a lot of the interest was obviously at the start of the race. Obviously, we got quite a downpour, and that caused quite a lot of debate with the whole safety car start. Once again, just bring up the fact that why do we even bother having a thing called the wet tyres? Like, honestly, like they pit straight onto intermediates. Literally, I tweeted it out before it started and called it. They pit straight onto inters. It is just pathetic. Like, I just don't understand any of it.
It's a joke.
Like,
absolute freaking joke.
I mean, I understand doing one lap behind the safety car. You know, I understand just do one lap and then you start the race. That's fine. But to do 5 laps behind the safety car while the sun is shining, no less. I mean, that's overkill.
The sun was even shining like 5 minutes before the race even started, didn't it? But they made the safety car call so early that they're sort of like, oh, we can't get this wrong, so we're going to stick with it. How dare we get a call wrong? Yeah. No, we must start under the safety car. We think it's dangerous. Yeah. And I mean, to be fair, you can see on the first couple of laps, Hamilton, I think, who was the other? I think Vettel was saying that there was quite a lot of standing water. Fair enough. Mm-hmm. But it very quickly changed from there's standing water here to it's almost intermediates. In like 2 laps, it changed completely. Yeah. And you can see as soon as the safety car went, it was just...
You knew they fucked up as soon as people were radioing in, like, oh, so how many laps still inters? Oh, only a few, like a couple.
I mean,
like...
they even asked Hulkenberg, do you think how long till dries?
Yeah. Like... Fuck's sake. Really?
I couldn't tell if his engineer was joking or not, by the way. It almost sounded like he had a hint of humor in his voice.
That radio was almost like, we'll stick it to FI a little bit and just ask this question.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I do agree. Like, even if they wanted to do the safety car start, like you said, Justin, like, couldn't they just do 1 lap and then not even just do like a normal safety car? Like, safety car comes in, they start the race. Like, surely they're able to somehow just work the electronics of the 5 red lights and just line them up again and just be like, okay, we've done 1 lap, it's all fine. Let's actually start the race proper. Because I think the last time we had a full wet tyre start has been like ages ago, like at least 4 years. I think like I really can't remember the last wet start.
I can't either.
Like, I think Korea 2010.
Possibly.
I wasn't even watching F1 in 2010, so I have no idea.
The problem with Korea is like we had so many different restarts because Korea then turned into a monsoon, so I can't remember if the original race started properly.
I was just going to say, but F1 should take a page out of MotoGP's book. In MotoGP, like, I don't know if it did it or not, but in MotoGP when there's a wet race, the safety car goes out and does some laps around the track before the race starts to see what it's like. I don't think the safety car did a lap today, so...
not too sure, no, because it was dry before, so there was no point. There's no point, basically.
Yeah, but when it rained, they had 5 minutes at least to do 1 lap. They could have gone around and done a lap with the safety car just to see what the track's like. But
the thing is, on like 1 and 2, Hamilton was already saying the safety car was going too slow for them. So also going under the safety car doesn't really actually do much to help the drivers understand how much how tricky it's going to be.
No, it really doesn't.
Because they're going way too slow for an F1 car. So it's just
And it's cooling down their brakes, it's cooling down the tires, all that kind of stuff. I mean, they're struggling to keep temperature in there. If they just let them drive around the lap at full pace, then in a lot of ways it would actually be safer.
Yeah, so, that was the start. I think that's enough said of that. Just, a bit BS, really. I mean, the same thing. Everyone was getting pissed off on Twitter, I think, so...
Lewis almost hit the safety car.
Yeah. As well, yeah.
That was quite funny as well. Yeah, he was quite eager to go into cops quite fast there, trying to make him back down the inside.
It would have literally been something like Codemasters. You know, when you hit the safety car and your car gets destroyed, you get black flag straight away and you go through it. It would have been something like that where you just destroyed it.
Well, that's pretty much the only kind of racing action Hamilton really had, to be honest, the entire race, going down the inside of a safety car.
The only side-by-side moment he had all day.
So let's get on to the race then. So obviously we had the safety car. It came in around, lap 5. And then the race went away, and it was intermediate conditions straight away, and then it dried up. So if you haven't watched the race by now, here's your little warning. But this is how the race eventually ended. Lewis Hamilton won his third British Grand Prix in a row here at Silverstone. Rosberg was 6.9 behind with some gearbox issues. Max Verstappen rounds at the podium in third place. Then we got Ricciardo, Kimi, Sergio Perez, Hulkenberg, Sainz, Vettel, and Kvyat rounding out the top 10. So in terms of the actual race, I think we'll just go a little bit on from like lap to lap, and then we'll talk about team to team. So in terms of the drying conditions, intermediates, Red Bull looked pretty good in the inters. I think a lot of us would have maybe preferred the rain to sort of almost stay here for a little bit, but as we said, it was literally shining outside, like probably some of the best.
I was praying for a second shower or something. Something.
Yeah, it really was needed because Verstappen was definitely faster. He was even joking about that in the little press conference room or whatever it is where they cooled down after the race, like joking to Hamilton that he was faster than them in the intermediate conditions. So I think that's something that we really liked. But as soon as it dried out, like everyone was sort of maybe worrying about, it was pretty much a 2014 sort of dominance for Mercedes. Like no one touched Lewis at all.
No.
Yeah.
Or Rosberg, really.
I mean, right, yeah. If it wasn't for that problem, then Rosberg probably would have been, a couple seconds up the road on Verstappen.
Yeah, it just.
I mean, those who don't watch the podcast yesterday, me and Aarava were on Skype talking, and literally said after that qualifying session, it had a 2014 race written all over it if it was dry. Yeah, that's what we got. It's just so predictable. Yeah. Honestly, it would have been a little bit better if Rosberg happened to be on pole, so then in the wet, Hamilton had to get past him. It was basically like Monaco again. Rosberg could not touch Hamilton in the wet. Yeah. He was slower than Verstappen.
I mean, on the inters, he started to pull it back. So it seems like it's just weird. Like he just can't seem to drive on the full wets. But then inters, he was fine.
Yeah, it's the same thing. Like obviously, Aarava, you might not know, but maybe Justin, you might know. Like in MotoGP, Rossi's untouchable in the wet, whereas Lorenzo is just super slow. It's just one of them things. Some people just can't seem to switch tires on in the wet. Yeah. And maybe others can, separating the men from the boys, like the saying says. And it just basically gave Hamilton the massive gap. And when the virtual safety car came along, after Verline spun out in intermediates, it basically Hamilton had a free pit stop and he had a nice comfy cushion and he just walked. He
definitely didn't push. He was just coasting it. I mean, he said quite early on he wanted to take the tyres to the end. So I think if he really wanted to make that 6.9 gap a lot bigger, he could have definitely done that. But I think he knew he almost had it in the bag pretty much after they all went onto the medium tyres. In terms of, because it was a 2014 start race, purely just because we didn't have the usual suspects there. We had Verstappen sort of there in the mix, made a beautiful pass in Beckett's on Rosberg on intermediate conditions. Really fantastic move in those tricky conditions. But apart from that, Ricciardo had unfortunate, I don't think he made... He went early onto the dries, was it? I think... He don't
know.
He seemed to fall back basically just at the beginning of the race.
Yeah, he was 18 seconds behind Verstappen.
Yeah.
By the end of the race.
Yeah, I don't think he had the pace all weekend.
Yeah, I picked Ricciardo for the podium for my predictions. I knew a Red Bull was probably going to get the podium, but I really thought it was going to be Ricciardo, not Verstappen.
It's been Verstappen all weekend, hasn't it? I mean, he comfortably out-qualified. He was fast in practice. Yeah, you can really see whether Max has really settled. Yeah, whether Max has really settled into that car now, or Ricciardo's had a bit of an off weekend. I don't know, but
maybe so. We go to Hungary next, which is obviously a very favourite track for Daniel.
I was watching Spanish coverage. They were really hyping up the Red Bulls around there, saying that they're going to be serious contenders.
Yeah. I think
in Hungary,
I think they could be very, very tasty around there.
I agree.
But I'll talk about the fact that there were no usual suspects. Ferrari, Raikkonen had a pretty okay one considering both Ferraris were very far down the field. They they didn't really have much pace in the wet at the beginning. Then they got the strategy a little. Well, they went for a risk basically. Vettel pitting early, and then you had the spin. Right
both times, I think, but they just both had problems.
Yeah, they had issues. Again. Vettel spinning, Kimi going off, and basically having to take the long route round through the kind of village section. So
3 times he did, didn't he? I think 3 times.
I think so. A lot, pretty much. I think nearly every driver made a trip through there, off on the runway. It was a very tricky one. Even on what was it, lap 40 or something, they're still having issues there. And even I think it was on Channel 4, Mark Webber was very surprised in the commentary box. They were still having some issues through turn 1. So I think probably all in all, an okay Grand Prix for Kimi then to actually come back in 5th because his teammate was down in 9th. Obviously, Tom, you're a Ferrari fan, so there's got to be a little bit gutting, really, that they performed so poorly. I mean, we maybe saw a little bit of it coming I mean, I was saying to you again, like last night, you were saying that it was going to be a 2014 race, and I said Ferrari going to be nowhere because they really didn't look that strong in qualifying, and it came to fruition. Really, they just.
I'm just not surprised, to be honest. I'm just frustrated. They just need to. I said it yesterday. They just need to forget about the season. I don't even know why they're wasting time anymore this season. I know there's still a fair few races to go, but they either don't get the luck or they just don't get it right. Their car is third best in the wet behind the Red Bull and the Mercedes. So even in a wet race, they can't compete. And then in the dry, they're still the third best car. They're just there. It's not like, for example, McLaren, where in the wet they've got half a chance because their car's got a decent amount of downforce. Ferrari's just there, third place in both wet and dry. And you saw, Kimi spun yesterday in qualifying. Vettel put in a shocking lap. And then the race today, Vettel had the 5-place grid penalty. Raikkonen went off the track 3 times. Vettel spun at turn 2.
I just think it's time to call it quits. Just be like, we'll move everything to 2017.
Focused on next year. Focused on 2017. Other teams are already doing it. Like Haas is already focusing on 2017. I think they said. Force India as well. I think said they're focusing on 2017.
Yeah, I think a lot of definitely all the midfield teams are starting to look to that because obviously we're on round 10 out of 21, isn't it? So we're about halfway there. So I think it's logical for them, but maybe Ferrari need to get into that mentality. Maybe just.
I do apologise for those bikes, by the way. Just a massive spree of Harleys went by my house. That's why.
Hamilton fans,
But
driving across cheering. So
honestly speaking, like if you apply logic to it, you would think Ferrari won at Hungary last year on net pace. They were fast enough. Could they do it again? It's not a Ferrari track, but they did it last year, so you think they'd be in there. But I just don't really. I can't see it anymore.
Like you said, I think Red Bull have a really good chance. More so.
I genuinely right now, I can't see Ferrari winning a race this season. Not at all.
I mean, you said it before. You said Ferrari are now the third fastest team, and they weren't at the beginning of the season. They were definitely second fastest. They weren't that far off of Mercedes, but now Red Bull has definitely overtaken them. They're definitely now the second fastest. They brought it back in Canada
a bit with the engine upgrade, but Austria, they got the strategy all wrong. Really bad strategy at Austria, and the pace. Yeah,
Austria was bad luck, I would say.
As well,
not bad pace.
They've been doing that all season, so in a way
they've been doing both things all season. More bad luck than bad pace, but this race was definitely they just didn't have the pace anyway. And then the bad luck of Vettel getting a 5-place grid pen on top, that was just the bad luck. But Ferrari need to write this season off. I think they're wasting their time. I mean, I know they've got money to spend, but the thing is they've got no more tokens to spend this season on this year's engine either.
They don't.
They've only got 3 tokens left. But it's not enough apparently to like warrant a full engine upgrade, if you know what I'm saying.
Right.
So those 3 tokens will remain probably for the rest of the season, unless they spend maybe 1 or 2 on like a minor
few little tweaks.
Fix. Yeah.
Right.
So they can't even improve their engine anymore this season. So they might as well start working on next season's engine when there's free development. And,
Wasn't it last podcast? Didn't you mention that there was like some reports that they were doing a kind of Mercedes style, already looking to like the 2018 stuff?
Yeah, they've already moved up. I mean, they Arriva Bene said they've already moved staff to next year's car, and even a small portion of staff to 2018. So,
I think that's a good route. I think that's a clever route.
And I watched. I said it to you, Arif. I think it was. I watched the Martin Brundle interview with Ross Brawn at Goodwood. It was like 30 minutes long.
Yeah.
But Ross Brawn's saying like Ferrari, instead of talking so much and hyping up and saying we just need to find a little bit of this, a little bit of that, improve the engine here, do this, and we should be there, all that sort of stuff. They should take the quiet approach, just not really say much, and just do the business behind closed doors and have a long-term plan. And this is the first step I'm seeing towards a long-term plan where they're actually going 2 years in advance to try and get something going here. So we'll see. But right now, as a Ferrari fan, I wouldn't get my hopes up for the season. Maybe they could get something like Monza possibly if they really push it, but no.
No. Yeah. Well, yeah, I think I have to agree with you there. I don't think there's many other things they can really do at this point. So, moving down the order, then we've got a really solid Grand Prix as a whole for Force India, 6th and 7th. Both there, right there. And you mentioned before the podcast, Justin, that Hulkenberg managed to pull the gap back to quite a kind of comical, close situation right at the end. Considering that Hulkenberg got a little bit screwed over at the start, got the kind of pit stop window wrong, and so fell back the order. Sergio almost held on to 5th. He did his best, but I think in the end, Raikkonen just had a bit too much pace for him.
Yeah. I mean, there really was. He didn't want to fight it too much. It was pretty clear from the body language of the car and stuff like that.
Yeah.
When Kimi was going by, it really didn't look like Sergio was going to put too much effort into trying to defend that position, especially with so many laps left. Like, I think when Kimi got by, there was still like 8 laps left in the race.
Yeah.
And it's like, do I really want to be defending fiercely for the next 8 laps in these sort of conditions with these sort of tires? So yeah, I think they just wanted to consolidate the points that they had, which was honestly the right choice. It's a solid points finish for both of them, and a solid points finish for the team as well. I mean, the only cars ahead of them were Mercedes, Ferrari, and Red Bull, and it was only one of the Ferraris that was ahead of them too. So
all in all, really solid weekend for them.
I think also, just quickly, Kimi as well. I think he really needed that result today. Obviously, he's been picking up a lot of slack from Twitter and whatnot, of people saying, that they shouldn't have re-signed him and all that. And I think Kimi needed a good result today. He needed to beat his teammate. He needed to beat Vettel. So I think it's good for him to beat him. But yeah, Force India, I don't know if they were the 4th fastest car out there today, but 6th and 7th can't complain at all.
Yeah, strategy worked out well for them. And then behind them was Carlos Sainz, so a bit of a quiet race for Sainz. I didn't really see much of him apart from his...
When he wasn't sideways,
yeah, his epic saves of the day. That was pretty much when we only saw him. So using his dad's gifts there in being able to rally the car around in 8th place. And then Vettel, obviously, we spoke about in 9th place, having that spin. Did a bit of a kind of risque move, got a little bit early on the dry tyres, didn't quite work out with that spin. And then Danica Fiat in 10th place, again, quite one, apart from when he was having an off moment. I think it was down towards Luffield. So, yeah, that's your top 10. And then behind them was a little bit interesting because it was a bit kind of mixed as to what was actually happening, because Massa 11th place, Jenson Button 12th, Alonso 13th, and Bottas 14th. So kind of a checkerboard of Williams and McLaren. Williams struggling a lot here in the wet conditions, especially in the intermediate conditions. And sort of this race for me confirmed the whole... They think they're a big team, but now they've really just slipped back down to like almost 2013 levels of performance right now.
Yeah, I mean, that might be a bit of an overstatement, but yeah, I mean, they've definitely slipped down. I mean, to think where they were in 2014, I mean, they were the 2nd best car just 2 years ago.
Yeah.
I can't imagine what it's like to be a Williams fan. Because it's got to be just this roller coaster of emotions. Like it's got to be terrible. Even worse than Ferrari or Red Bull or any other teams. Just Williams, it's just like they reach these really high peaks and then these really low valleys as well.
Yeah.
They've got to watch. I think, in my opinion, I've said something to myself for a while now, but they've got to keep an eye out for that, because they need next season's car to be brilliant, because sponsors like Martini will leave, and that's going to hurt them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Martini was a big plus for them. I think that has helped them out a lot. So
yeah, they need that cash.
Yeah, exactly. It's they're an established team in Formula One, but they're not like one of those. It's not like Mercedes where they have the backing of like
they're not a manufacturer.
Yeah, a huge division like that. So they do have to actually watch out for it. I mean, we've never heard of them having any financial issues, but it is there. It is still a threat that they need to just keep working on, trying to make sure they get the performances there. And it was obviously talking about the checkerboard with McLaren. For me, a little bit promising to see that we're at least a little bit nearer to Williams today. I mean, obviously, Button had to do a big recovery drive after having a rear wing failure, which severely pissed me off yesterday. And then Fernando was looking actually really good, apart from his spin, which is really unfortunate. I think he would have probably been there in 11th place, actually, probably ahead of Massa today if it wasn't for that spin.
I think he could have got points.
Well, maybe could have got that last point on Danica Fiat, maybe, because I think maybe the
he
McLarens
was keeping Vettel behind him, and he was all over the back of Massa. He looked good. He looked real good. I thought he could have done it, but yeah, unfortunate. I think Button as well. If he actually got a better chance of qualifying a bit higher up, he could have also. I think it could have been a double points finish for McLaren. Honestly, and they thought this was their worst track, even worse than Austria. So. You can definitely see, I mean, they claimed, was it yesterday, they said their engine's now 2015 Ferrari power unit spec, so basically what's in the back of the Toro Rosso.
And I'd say that's not far off.
No,
that's
I'd
pretty
agree.
accurate,
Yeah,
I think.
I think that's pretty accurate. I think you can definitely see McLaren are steadily getting there. I think next season, once the token system's scrapped and we've got the free engine development, and with the 2017 regulations, there is a big chance for McLaren here to establish themselves, especially as maybe the 4th best team permanently behind the top 3. next season.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think going into the next race, it could be quite a good one for them. Obviously, Hungary, quite a high downforce one, sector 2 and 3. So
last season, 5th place Alonso got, didn't he?
Yeah, exactly.
Like a horrible car.
It was a great finish for Alonso. And obviously, we've had hectic races in the V6 era, basically at Hungary. So I think it's one of those ones where it's like, okay, it's up for grabs. If something crazy happens again, it
especially
can be
the
there.
new tyre rule.
And I swear, Hungary was never really that exciting in the V8 era.
No.
Yeah. I swear it was never really that exciting, but as soon as the V6 era hit, it's like every year, it's amazing.
It's like, what was it? I think it was Bahrain, wasn't it? Like I was saying in the previous podcast, it was like that. Like Bahrain was never that thrilling in the V8 era, and then V6s came along, and it kind of bunched up the field a little bit more, allowed them to kind of slipstream each other a bit better, and it's become a very exciting track. So yeah, looking forward to Hungary. That should be hopefully a much better one than
I think. Overall, though, the magic this season is with the 3 tyre compound strategy things. It just works magic. But
genius
Hungary was a brilliant track back when they used to refuel. 2009 Circa used to be a good track for strategy because there was more strategy element to it. Like this year, we'll get that strategy element again because of the extra compound. So that will make it very interesting. I think today, one of the reasons why the race was rubbish is because everyone went to the end of mediums pretty much. So there was no magic with the tyre compounds. You know, like when you see the different sort of strategies.
The race,
it's basically down to that.
The rain, I should say, that was sort of like a double-edged sword. Like it was making it exciting at the beginning, but then it meant because there was no other shower.
The dry.
It compromised the dry, and they just took it to the end there. And the medium tyres were surprisingly, all held up. No one had a pop off on the tyre, which we might have thought about, especially after Pirelli was like
26 laps.
Yeah, yesterday they put that statement out, which I thought was weird. I think it was a typo in motorsport, but it might have not been. But they said 26 laps for mediums, and then I think it was 26 for hards, and then 28 for mediums or something. I think that might have been a typo, but the fact they took it to the end, that was the thing that sort of just neutralized everything. And then apart from the teams that we've actually talked about, then there was Nasr 15th, Gutierrez 16th, and Magnussen 17th. Those were your finishes, and then retirements from Palmer, Harry Anton, Verline, both having offs at the same points of the track. Turn 1, although to be fair, Turn 1 was very, very tricky for everyone out there, and I guess obviously the amount of cars maybe not as good as the other cars, might have had a bit of a harder time, so you can't really blame either of them there. And then Romain Grosjean had, I think it was like an engine failure basically in the end or something, I don't know. He just pulled over.
Yeah, something
He pulled over on like the exit of Cops, like on the right-hand side, so that was a real shame for him. And Gutierrez, well, Gutierrez 16th, so maybe it wouldn't have been a very exciting one for him anyway if he kind of stayed in there, so... And then Marcus Ericsson retired as well, which was really odd, because Marcus Ericsson like parked up and was sat there for like, what was it, 5 laps, and they just... I don't know what they're trying to do, like restart the car.
They sent him back out, didn't they? They sent him back out for a couple of laps and then he came back in after.
Yeah.
And then he came back in.
Yeah, pretty much. But that was pretty much the Grand Prix, unfortunately. Just not a lot to really talk about in terms of actual overtake moves. The 2 biggest ones that come to mind were Verstappen and Rosberg. Then Rosberg gets him back with DRS later on in the dry period, and then Raikkonen and Perez.
Outson's move on Bottas
and
was
that
at the outside of Val was
that was a very
fantastic,
nice move.
Club.
I think Webber liked that. Webber on Channel 4, I don't know if you guys were watching the Sky one, but Webber on the Channel 4 commentary was like, he's gone around the outside of him, left him out there, and he's going to make his own plans, mate.
I watched Spanish coverage for the first time because we got paid TV in Spain. I was giving it a go. To be fair, it wasn't as bad as I thought, but they definitely don't provide as much info. Like, for example, I'll give you an example. When they switched over, like you had Hamilton, Rosberg, and all those in the wets, and you had Vettel, Raikkonen, etc. on the Inters. Yeah. They weren't giving us no lap times or nothing, no references. So
they're just like they're there,
informationless. Yeah, so it was alright. I'm probably gonna stick to English coverage though, but yeah, the race was. I'd probably say it was worse than last year's one. It was similar conditions last year.
No, definitely. Like I was saying,
definitely.
I was saying the guys, like Matt and them on Friday, like last year's Grand Prix, we chose a brilliant Grand Prix to go to last year because that was thrilling, especially with the Williams. The fact that they got off such a good start, even though they bottled it in the end, that was so exciting. And then the whole kind of drying to wet period, you have people like Vettel going sideways through the field. It was fantastic. But this year was just. Yeah, it got actually ruined a little bit by the rain. Like, we just basically didn't have enough. We needed a bit more rain to kind of come later on in the race, unfortunately.
Overall, the best way to summarise this race is the safety car set the precedent for how the race would be.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. We lost out on potentially the best racing of the day during that 5 laps.
Yeah.
I think those 5 laps potentially could have been the most exciting laps of the entire
day.
Very
much so.
I agree.
Yeah, just going back to... I think they should just stop producing the wet tyres. Just don't make them.
I tweeted that. I tweeted that at Monaco. I said,
just
stop
save
it.
money.
You
just don't make
save
them.
money.
Just don't make them. So I think the last thing we can do to round out the podcast, because obviously it's going to be a bit of a short one for this one, I think the last final thing is obviously the little debate about the radio. We don't go into it too much because we don't have all the details yet, and we're actually waiting on the investigation while we record this. So you guys will probably find out what happens after we've recorded and uploaded the podcast. But obviously Nico had a gearbox issue, and he was told by his engineer to skip 7th gear. Nico then went, how do I do that? And he just said, shift through it. And that was the kind of issue because people, obviously going back to Baku, Hamilton had the D rating and he wasn't allowed to be told like what setting he should do. Now, personally, from my perspective, I think it's a little bit of a different situation because D rating, if you don't know what that is, basically the electrical deployment doesn't work properly, so the car just gets slower. That's not actually going to retire your car at any point unless it kind of starts to cook the battery or something like that.
Right.
Whereas the gearbox issue, it's a very serious gearbox issue. Having to skip a gear is never good. Having to shift through 7th, quite a top end track, obviously, up towards Stowe, Rosberg. You could see Verstappen towards the end was starting to close in on Rosberg just because it might have been an awkward thing to do. Because obviously going into Maggotts and Beckett, you're going to use 7th gear briefly, and he had to constantly shift through that. So I think that was why Mercedes were confident in telling him those orders, but he is under investigation, so we'll see.
Toto Wolff said the failure would have been terminal had they not said something to fix it, so they had to respond. End of the day, I think some Hamilton fans might get really pissed off, like, oh, how come they didn't tell Hamilton this at Baku, but they told Rosberg today? Oh, favoritism, grr, whatever. But let's be realistic here. We all want the radio rules to be opened up a bit, not so restrictive. So just because it happened to be Rosberg doesn't mean automatically it's not fair. I think
in both situations, it's. I think that's more the case. I think that's a debate here. I don't think it's a debate of Rosberg was told and Hamilton was not. I think it's the debate of okay, so if he got told here, it's like can't we just open it up a little bit to the point where it could have been done in Baku again? Because I think even though the gearbox is clearly more important than the D rating still hurt Hamilton quite a fair bit. So even though it might not be terminal, I feel like in the rule books or whatever, I'm not too sure. Like it's a very wish-washy area that the way they've written the rules. But I feel like there should be a line in there that kind of just states, something like D rating is on the same level as a gearbox issue, perhaps because it's hindering.
Right, because at this point, it's affecting the racing.
Yeah.
Like it's actually stopping drivers from racing properly, and that's a problem.
Yeah.
Because I mean, with the state of F1 as it is right now, we need as much racing as we can get. Yeah. If we could get more racing by just allowing slightly more communication, then please do that.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Yeah, I'm just reading here from Sky Sports. So right now they're saying, as we're recording this at 3:36 BST, it says that the meeting with stewards is still half an hour away. So we're definitely not going to hear about. You're definitely going to hear about that by the time we upload this. So you guys will know. But so that's our thoughts on the radio stuff. Yeah, I think
Mercedes are good about that stuff, though. I really like Mercedes. I mean, I feel like they have a dedicated guy that's just sitting there with the rule book, and just going, "Yep, that's allowed. Nope, that's not allowed." So I'm pretty sure that it's going to stand. That's how I feel.
Like with the PSIs last year at Monza.
Yeah,
pretty much.
Huh?
Yeah,
just like the PSI scandal.
Oh, right. Yeah.
They were like, okay, we might get checked here, so Hamilton just go fast to bring the bring the pressures back. Yeah, like you said, Mercedes, they always seem like a very in the know team for the most part. Minus a few mistakes here and there with some pit stops and stuff. But I think they should be fine. I think it would be very, very harsh to give a penalty because, as you said, it would have been terminal. So
apparently one of the managers at the start of the season got a reprimand because they broke the rule.
Okay.
But just because it happens to be Rosberg and it got broadcasted on live TV to millions of people doesn't mean it's any worse. Personally, if he is going to incur some sort of penalty, then nothing worse than a 5-second penalty. I mean, it's just a simple thing. Like, if it's leading to an actual failure of the car, then... Because obviously, if the gearbox broke, then that would have led to a 5-place grid penalty for a new gearbox in the next race, I believe. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, exactly. So
end of the day, some common sense has to prevail here. So worst way is give him a 5-second. If not, just give him a reprimand, and that's it. So
I think a lot of people. I saw a lot of people on Twitter immediately kind of go on the whole, okay, this definitely should be a penalty. But I think, as I just mentioned before, I think it should be the other way around. Maybe this incident should kind of cast more light back on that Baku incident and say that should have been allowed back then,
rather than were like, oh, it's a penalty. You got to give him a penalty.
Rather than actually casting doubt on Nico and everything like this with the whole he should definitely get a penalty. And you said small 5 second. If he gets a 5 second, he's behind Verstappen, and that means Hamilton. That means Hamilton then moves within one.
And I think Red Bull was counting on that. I think Red Bull was specifically telling Max, keep within. Yeah. He might get a penalty. Keep within 5 seconds.
That's quite important. If he does get a 5 second, he moves with it. Hamilton then moves within 1 point of Rosberg.
Yep.
So that is actually that could turn out to be quite crucial if he does get a penalty for this. So. Yeah, it's small 5 second, but actually quite a big thing for the championship there in terms of going into Hungary before the summer break.
Yeah, that 5 seconds is 3 points.
Yeah, I mean, it's only 3 points though. I mean, at the end of the day, he's still in the championship lead and he's still finished on the podium. So that's what I mean.
Just mentally, I think you saw there in the really awkward winners' room. Rosberg really he's just silent, drinking his water bottle, and then you had a Hamilton. Literally right there in front of him. Hamilton just goes to Verstappen. So was Nico faster than you, or were you faster than him then? Just trying to get a sense of if Nico was just slow out there. Basically, he might as well have just gone. Was he shit out there today? Because you were out in front of him before, so that was a very, very awkward room. But I think that pretty much wraps it up. I mean, we can't really talk too much about anything else. Don't want to.
The only other thing that I was gonna say, we could talk about the booing, but I think we're all we all agree on that one that anybody that boos an F1 driver is not a true F1 fan.
Yeah, I think it's just I had a few people tweet me being like, well, what happened in Austria? Well, I didn't watch the race in Austria, so I didn't even comment on it. But the booing in Austria that we saw for Hamilton was wrong as well. Apparently there was some misinformation with the replays at Austria. I don't know.
Yeah, the commentator at the track.
Right. Okay. I can't speak for that, but either way, it was wrong. Booing in any sense is wrong in F1.
Yeah.
It's just the thing. Yeah. I know football does it, but it's a very different sport, and I just like that sense that. We don't boo anyone. So it was a bit of a shame. It was probably funnier as well, the fact that Mark Webber on the podium was interviewing Hamilton. Hamilton said, yeah, and the great thing is there's not much booing. And then Mark Webber moves to Rosberg. Immediately there's booing, and Mark has to say, no, let's not have any of that. That was just...
At the end of the day, if you don't like a driver, don't boo. Just stand there.
Right.
Don't if you don't cheer him or anything, just
don't clap.
But don't boo. Just go silent. That's it. Yeah. Job done. You know what I mean?
I think the one time booing was acceptable was Mark Webber, the Malaysia incident with Vettel, the whole multi-21, and then the next they kept booing Vettel for the rest of the season, and even I, who was really upset about the Malaysia incident, multi-21. It's like just move past it. It's been so many months now. Just get over it. Stop booing him.
I think even half a month, I think would be the cut off point. Even a month is just come on. It's been an entire 4 weeks. Let's just slow it down a little bit here. So
Mark has moved past it. I think you should too.
It's just unfortunate, and I'm not going to go more into it because I'll probably say something I'll regret. So unfortunate, but as a whole, that has been the British Grand Prix review for the podcast. Unfortunately, not a very electric one that we thought it might be. The rain, a double-edged sword, and we didn't see much.
5 out of 10. I'll give it a 5 out of 10.
Yeah, I'll maybe go even 4, perhaps.
I'll say 4. I'd go 4.
But at the end of the day, Hamilton did the job.
Worst race of the season for me, personally.
Yeah, I'd have to maybe agree with you. Yeah.
Considering there was rain, that was a terrible race.
When you consider the weather, especially.
The potential was there.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
But end of the day, congratulations to Lewis Hamilton. 3 British Grand Prix in a row.
First time.
Say what you like about him in terms of your opinions on him, but, just fantastic stuff, really. He's literally just electric out there. No one could touch him, really, and I honestly think he was just coasting at the end. I think he honestly could have got a much bigger gap than 6.9. But that's been your podcast for this one, for the British Grand Prix. So, as always, let us know what you guys thought of that Grand Prix in the comments below. Hit the like button if you did enjoy the podcast. If you're around here, then subscribe to this channel for the podcast. If you like what these guys had to say, then go follow them over on Twitter and check out their channels. Links in the description, and their Twitters will be, as Tom's pointing to, above their faces. But that has been the Pitlane Podcast, episode number 20. Can't believe we're already on that. But we'll see you guys for the next one, 21. Hope you enjoy us today. Goodbye.